Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Office of Consumer Credit Commissioner's stakeholder meeting to discuss the rule review for motor vehicle sales finance. My name is Matt Nance, and I'm the OCCC's General Counsel. I'm joined by other members of the OCCC staff, including Commissioner Leslie Pettyjohn, Director of Licensing, Finance, and Human Resources, Moran Diamond, Director of Consumer Protection, Huffman Lewis, Assistant Director of Exam Operations, Carl Hubenthal, Assistant General Counsel, Vivek Vedanarayanan, and Paralegal Nico Fisher, who's acting as our meeting organizer. We're holding this meeting through an online webinar, and I want to thank everyone for joining us. Getting input from stakeholders is a really important part of our rulemaking process, and these meetings help us make sure we produce the best rules possible. Our webinar platform is GoToWebinar. Some of you might be listening on your phones, some may be watching on computers, some may be doing both. For those watching on your computer, there's a questions window where you can submit comments to staff. If you have technical questions about using the webinar, you can type them in there and Nico will try to answer those. We're discussing a pre-comment draft of rule amendments that's available on the OCCC's webpage for recent and upcoming rules. On that webpage, you can see the draft rules by clicking on the link for Motor Vehicle Rule Review. If you have comments on the rule amendments, you can go ahead and type those in at any time, and I'll be getting to those in just a few minutes. And if you're on a computer with a mic, there is a function allowing you to raise your hand, and then we can let you make a comment verbally. We're talking about rule amendments that are coming out of a process called rule review. The Texas Government Code requires state agencies to review their rules every 4 years to make sure they should still exist and to make any necessary updates. And when we do that, we try to get input from stakeholders on whether the rules should be updated. The rules governing motor vehicle sales finance in Title VII, Chapter 84 of the Texas Finance Code are currently up for review. So I'd like to first summarize these draft rule amendments and then lay out the proposed timeline for these rules, and then you'll have a chance to provide comments. First, in section 84.602, the amendments would replace the requirement to list a responsible person for each office with the requirement to list a compliance officer. The compliance officer would be a person who can be contacted on compliance issues at a company level. Next, in 84.608, we specified the process for the OCCC to notify a license applicant of the intent to deny a license application and how to determine the 30-day period for the applicant to request a hearing. This is consistent with how the OCCC currently notifies applicants of an intent to deny and is meant to ensure consistency with section 348.504 of the Texas Finance Code. Next is an amendment that would move language from current 84.611 to new section 84.710. 84.611 deals with license fees. The OCCC is authorized by the Finance Code to set license fees to carry out its functions and enforce Chapter 348 of the Finance Code with respect to motor vehicle licensees. Currently, 84.611 authorizes the OCCC to collect a variable annual assessment based on the dollar volume of transactions reported by a licensee in an annual renewal statement. The proposed amendments would move this language to new section 84.710, designate the statement as an annual report, and specify a June 30th deadline for the report, making this requirement more consistent with other OCCC reporting provisions, such as the reporting rule for licensed pawn shops. The OCCC anticipates that it would begin collecting reports under the new provision in 2026. Next, in section 84.613, we'd make a couple corrections relating to the review of criminal history to ensure consistency with amendments to the Texas Occupations Code. In 84.617, we'd add a reference to the Finance Code explaining that the late filing fee for a registered office is $250. And in section 84.705, which deals with unclaimed funds, we'd update a reference to the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts and laws in the Property Code. We have a few different amendments related to record keeping and the record keeping rules at sections 84.707, 84.708, and 84.709. Some of the amendments relate to electronic record keeping. These amendments would simplify and rearrange language throughout the rules to refer first to electronic record keeping and then second to paper record keeping as electronic record keeping becomes increasingly prevalent. We also have some record-keeping amendments for sorting and filtering the transaction reports and assignment reports that licensees are currently required to maintain and be able to provide. We also have amendments related to data security that would require licensees to maintain policies and procedures for their information security programs, as described in the FTC's Safeguards Rule, and to maintain data breach notifications under the Business and Commerce Code. Data security is a crucial issue, and the OCCC's most recent strategic plan includes items for promoting cybersecurity awareness and best practices and monitoring cybersecurity incidents and remediation by regulated entities. And recent data breaches in the news, including the CDK dealer management system, highlight the urgent need for vigilance in this industry. These proposed amendments will help ensure that the OCCC can monitor this crucial issue. And finally, we have some amendments related to plain language contracts. In section 84.802, the amendments would clarify and reorganize the requirements for submitting a non-standard plain language contract. This would conform to recent amendments that the Finance Commission adopted for regulated loan plain language contracts. In section 84.806, there are updates to the list of acceptable typefaces for plain language contracts to account for electronic contracts and screen reading. In 84.808, there's updated language in the model plain language clauses. This follows changes passed by the Texas legislature for inspection fees. In 2023, the legislature removed general inspection requirements for non-commercial vehicles, but maintained provisions allowing counties to require emissions inspections. So the amendments would replace references to the inspection fees with provisions on the inspection replacement fee and the emissions inspection fee. And on that same issue in section 84.809, the amendments would revise the model retail installment contracts provisions on inspection fees to include the model language that I just described. So that's the summary of the draft amendments. Here's a proposed timeline for the rule amendments. You can see that we're requesting informal pre-comments by tomorrow, July 30th. We intend to propose the amendments at the Finance Commission's August 16th meeting. There would be an official comment period during the month of September. We'd present the rule for adoption at the Finance Commission's October meeting, and the rule would be effective in November. We anticipate we would begin collecting annual reports under the new section 84.710 in 2026. This is, of course, a tentative timeline, and all of this is subject to the Finance Commission's approval of the rules. So with that, I've summarized this rule action, and I'll open things up to comments on the rule amendments. Again, there are two ways to provide your feedback through this webinar. First, you can type your comment out and send it to us through the webinar's question feature, or if you're on a computer with a mic, there's a function allowing you to raise your hand. And if you have a longer written question, feel free to type a quick message into the question field and go to webinar, explaining that you have a longer message, and we can give you some time to type it out. And I'm showing that we have a hand raise from Karen Phillips. Nico, if you could unmute Ms. Phillips and let her make her comment.
Ms. Phillips, you can unmute yourself when you're ready.
All right, thank you so much. I have a couple of questions here. Could you kind of go through a little bit as to the sorting and filtering requirements that are in 84.707? In other words, I'm a little concerned that not all of my members are going to be able to sort by date of contract or date of sale, by retail buyer's name, status of the transaction, and whether it's been assigned or not. Out of curiosity, have you all determined whether or not all the various DMS programs can sort all these different ways?
Okay,
That's
thank
fine.
you for the question. We tried to look at some of the fields that are required to be on existing reports. So the current rule does require fields for, name of the customer and date, and in the existing transaction report requirement, and requires an assignment report that licensees should be able to produce. So it was our understanding that existing systems can produce that. I don't know. So that was our understanding. Huff or Carl, do you have anything to add to existing understanding of what we're seeing?
This is Huffman Lewis. In the past, where we've been taking a look at exams and the exams required responses from the licensee, the responses were presented in sortable fields. For instance, if we were asking the respondent to identify the license, title, and registration fees field from a contract, or the documentary field from a contract. So it's our understanding that the DMS systems are capturing all of this information.
Well, that's good to know. I'm just a little concerned as to whether or not the capability is there, and that's my only question. I'll try to ask some of my members if any of this is going to be a concern going forward. And I'm not saying it is. I'm just trying to educate myself on the issue.
Okay. Ms. Phillips, did you have any other questions?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
In 84.710, the new language in B about the filing an annual report. I understand you to say that this was something that's already being done. On the required information in B, it says any other information required under the OCCC's instructions. Do you have any idea as to what that additional information might be? Thank you.
I think what we're looking at is really the some high level information about transaction volumes and dollar volumes. So again, in order to contribute to calculating an adjustable annual assessment. So really what we're looking for is some basic information about transaction numbers and dollar volume.
Okay. And I have another question, I think this is my last one, if you don't mind. And that's in the new model clauses about the new lines that will succeed what's currently there, so that it's now going to be the replacement fee as well as the line labeled government vehicle inspection program replacement fee. How long are the printers and dealers going to have in order to reprogram and have new contracts out there?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that, because we don't intend to require that licensees submit updated contracts if they have a contract that's been accepted by our office since, I think it was mid 2016 that we had the last major update requiring licensees to go through and update the text of their contract. So if licensees have contracts that have been accepted by our office since then, we don't intend to require that those licensees necessarily resubmit. We do want to make sure that this model clause, reflects the model language, but there are ways to use existing contracts to disclose these fees, including possibly the other charges section at the bottom. But yeah, I appreciate the question, and our intention as of right now is that if licensees don't want to resubmit and want to determine a way to accurately disclose these fees using existing contracts, we're not going to require them to resubmit. So does that make sense?
Well, it does. I understand, there's always some 2 for blank on the bottom there on the model contracts. I'm just wondering if indeed, how long of a period of time, because obviously we're not going to have the safety inspection anymore. It's going to be the replacement fee. So is there going to be maybe an alternative so that you can strike out inspection and call it replacement fee instead of reprogramming for the bottom of the contract? I guess my concern is that it takes a lot of time sometimes to get the DMS companies to come in and reprogram everybody, as well as the cost out there. So if you do it one way and then new contracts come out with the replacement fee out there, then I'd have to reprogram again. So I'm just wondering if there's going to be a period of time where we can transition into this new replacement fee language.
Okay, we can consider that further. Just 2 things I'd point out. One is that this requirement, I understand it, the law creating this goes into effect in 2025, January 1st, 2025.
Yes.
So that's number 1. And number 2 is that under current Chapter 341 of the Texas Finance Code, that does require submission of plain language contracts before licensees start using them. So by the legislature set that January 1st, 2025 date. So our office isn't really in a position to change that. And there's going to need to be some accommodation of that fee by that date. But if your group has any suggestions for that, or there's anything we can clarify about when to require this. Again, the main intent here is to make sure that the model clause reflects the new requirement. Dealers will have to determine how to accurately disclose this on contracts that have been submitted to our office.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I do have one more question. When you all are reviewing, or it says here you're asking to see the Information Security Act under the program under the safeguards rule, will you all just be, it's that like checking a box? Are you actually going to be reviewing the safeguards program that the DNR has in place, or what exactly is that going to entail?
I wouldn't say it's just checking a box. Our staff may conduct some review of that. But for this rule action, it is the record keeping requirement, and is really just kind of a minimal, baseline as described in this rule. But our staff might also review some of the safeguard practices of the business.
Will you all be making recommendations when you read it, or not?
There could be some instructions related to that. Huff, did you want to add anything on that about possible exam issues?
I don't think I have anything to add right now.
If I may, this is Leslie Pettyjohn. I just would jump in. I think, our concern is that is the consumer information being protected? And I think if we had concerns that there were some potential vulnerability of not protection, if the consumer's information was not protected, and maybe there had been some experience with that, that might cause us to have some more questions and might cause us to I'm not necessarily saying make recommendations, but might cause us to comment on whether or not that about the adequacy of the particular policies and procedures related to protecting consumers' information. So that would be really our primary focus.
Okay. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Nico, do we have any other questions through the chat or hand raises?
Matt, there are no other questions at this time.
Okay. Okay, I do want to make sure we've allowed an opportunity for all stakeholders to comment. Again, if you have a written comment, you can type it in the webinar's question feature. If you have a longer question or comment you need to type out, you can feel free to send a short message. And you can also use the hand raise feature. I'm going to wait 1 minute before we start wrapping up the meeting, just to make sure we've given all stakeholders a chance who want to comment. So 1 minute starting now. Okay, I don't see any other hand raises or comments. So I do want to thank everyone for joining us and participating. Rule updates are available on the OCCC website, and we'll also be posting audio of this meeting. We are accepting written pre-comments on these rules until 5 p.m. tomorrow, July 30th. Please email those to me at rule.comments@occc.texas.gov, which is our email address for rule comments. Thank you all for attending. Please be safe out there, and we will see you next time. Thank you.